I don't like doing my own home repairs, and when I made some videos that honestly show how much I don't like it, they seem to help a lot of other guys like me. So I thought it would be good to make this new set of videos. Guys like me have a million questions for the progressive activists that we see on the news, but nobody on TV ever asks those questions. On CNN, the host probably agrees with the activists, so his questions are weak. And on Fox News, the host just tries to make them look bad. Either way, nobody's asking the questions that might actually help us get a feel for where they're coming from, so we might actually understand them a little better. It's no surprise that people who disagree over politics are so angry at each other nowadays. So right before Christmas, me and my brother, who is himself progressive, we drove around the West and did our own interviews. We drove to 22 cities and interviewed dozens of people who support progressive causes to ask those questions that are never asked. We're not trying to change their mind or make them look bad. We just want to understand where they're coming from. These folks were brave, considering what can happen nowadays if you say one wrong thing on YouTube. And we talked about a lot of really sensitive subjects, so just leave right now if these conversations might offend you. If you stay, though, I think you'll hear some things you've never heard before and have a better understanding of your fellow Americans. I did. From Portland, we drove to Eugene, Oregon and met with Ericka Thessen, who's worked in healthcare for 20 years and is the Reproductive Rights Committee Chair for the National Organization for Women South Willamette Valley chapter. We started by asking her what was the current focus of her activism.
Trying to improve family and medical leave. We do have the Family Medical Leave Act. You get 12 weeks of leave. It's protected, but it's not paid. And most people are living paycheck to paycheck. We can't. None of us can miss 6 weeks, 12 weeks. Some people can't even miss 2 weeks. I've seen the statistics that somewhere between 60% or more of women who have a baby have to go back to work within 2 weeks. I've had 3 children. There's no way on God's green earth I could have done my job where I'm literally on my feet all day long. I'm lifting patients. I'm helping to ambulate and move them. There's no way I could have done that 2 weeks after having any of these 3 children. I remember a coworker of mine that at 2 weeks into having this baby, she was back at work, and it was gut-wrenching, and then the ability to bond with that baby, be a better mother, have a more effective ability to raise your child. You can't do that. All of a sudden mom gets sick, baby gets sick because baby's in daycare. And part of the problem is most daycares don't take babies 6 weeks of age. So if you have to go back at 2 weeks and your baby can't get childcare till 6, what are you doing with this child? For 4 weeks, you're hoping family and friends can help you. So we got to build stronger families, and that starts from, making sure that these families can be there to take care of their babies right after they're born. And then, years later, if something happens, your kid falls off their skateboard and breaks something, will you be able to miss work to take care of your child? So that's really important to me.
Okay, and remind me again, your activism really, went into gear after the Trump election. What is it exactly about the Trump administration, or just Trump in general, that is such kind of a triggering agent for folks that think there is a need for greater activism than there's ever been before?
There were some specific things that happened, but also just a general thing. I've been alive through Republican and Democratic presidents, and Donald Trump, I don't think probably all of his policy ideas, although they're scattered and all over the place, I don't disagree with 100% of them, but I find him to be very divisive and very inflammatory, and just the way that he addresses people is very coarse, and I'm in my 40s, and so yes, I engage in social media, but I don't find it appropriate for presidents to be tweeting rude things. And so that's part of it. I feel that America is better than this. I feel that we shouldn't all be fighting with each other. There shouldn't be such lack of respect, such meanness. We can have opposing views and not be downright cruel. And so I think that's part of it. The America that I grew up in, the America that, my family came here from Ireland and Scotland, this is just not us.
When you think about Trump supporters, where do you think they're coming from?
I think that the economy in the world as it is hasn't been good to them for 10 or 20 or more years, and they're fed up. They are fed up. They're also fed up with voting for people who said they were going to do something and then get to Washington and it's different. I have family members, I had friends that voted for Trump. You know, one of my dear friends was always, you know, wearing her adorable, deplorable shirt. And I always tried to imagine, if I'm going to say something disparaging about a Trump supporter, I'd have to say it to Lenora's face. Like, could I say it to Lenora's face? If I can't say it, then I don't get to say it out loud, because it's crass, it's rude. I'm making a gross generalization, but I don't know, I just think Trump supporters were fed up. I mean, I do think he's a great salesman. He's a little bit of a snake oil salesman, and I think he is very convincing. And so I think on some level, some of his policies are going to hurt the very same people who voted for him.
Some of the more controversial, the most controversial things about Trump, the things that if I believed that they were true, I wouldn't support him in a million years, right? Some of those things, I see them and I don't see the same thing that other people see. Mm-hmm. For example, I know his crudity with women is just stunning. I mean, the transactional nature, mm-hmm. You know, if you listen to the whole, why in the world he thought he needed to impress Billy Bush, who knows, right? But I think it's a bit of fake outrage to call that an assault. And I hope I don't offend you by that, because I know some people are offended when you say it's not an assault. Do you think there's any possibility that a lot of the things that you hate the most about him are things that are the result of media portrayal and confirmation bias?
I think that's always a possibility. And I think all of us have to be honest. Of course we have a confirmation bias. So I think trying to really pull your emotions out of it, try to figure out the facts, you know. I mean, and I think sometimes he does say things to be inflammatory. To be inflammatory, we don't just, you know, what is that saying? You don't have to show up for every fight you're invited to. Like, we don't have to get outraged every time he says something outrageous. I mean, we're adults. Look at the facts. Try to pull yourself back. Reacting to everything isn't helpful for anybody long term. And it's just going to exhaust everybody. So, yeah. But I do believe that there is some bias there.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It's so honest of you to say that, because some people just would not admit that in a million years, right?
I will say I do want to share what happened. I had something happen the day after the election that was really the fuel that got me, you know, involved. At the time, my eldest was in middle school, and it was literally the day after the election. And it was probably an hour into school, and she texted me, and she's like, "Can you come pick me up?" And I was like, "No, I'm at work." And she said, "Things feel really weird today." And I said, the whole world feels weird today, Megan. It's the day after a big election upset, you know, whatever. And I was like, "I'm not coming to get you from school." And she said, "It's just a whole bunch of boys walked up to me, and they said, 'We're glad Trump got elected, because now we can do whatever we want to the pretty girls and get away with it.'" And I said, "Well, I'm still not getting you from school. That's not an appropriate comment. You need to go tell the principal or a teacher or somebody." And, you know, then she texted me several more hours later, and she's like, "No, really, come get me." And I was like, "No, really, you need to be in school, and, you know, there are teachers there that can handle this stuff." And she's like, you know, and my daughter had only recently come out as being gay, and she said that, you know, one of the boys walked up to her and said, "You know, now that Trump's president, they're going to send you to a camp that can fix you so you're not gay anymore." And again, I was like, that's not accurate. Okay, no one's sending you to a camp. You're safe. Please go tell the teacher, you know. And because I heard what she was saying, and it sounded very scary, but at the same time, I'm not going to feed into the hysteria. But it was really scary for me because, you know, it was the first time my child ever told me, you know, we had conversations in the days after that. I don't know if I feel safe being in America. Is it safe for me to be a girl? Is it safe for me to be a woman? Is it safe for me to be gay? And I'm like, of course it's safe, you know, but that was very scary for me, you know, and at the same time, in this community, especially in our local school area, we have a lot of undocumented families and undocumented children. And I don't know, it was probably 3 weeks after the election, and I was going to school to pick up my littlest, and one of the kids, you know, grabbed me by the hand and said, you know, if my parents get sent away, can I come live with you guys? And I was crushed because I don't know anybody's documentation status. I don't want to know. It's not my business, and I don't want the responsibility of that knowledge. But that really crushed me. because there were a lot of kids at our school that had to, they were born here, their parents are undocumented, and these families are having to find ad litem guardians for their children if and when it happens. And that was really hard for me. So those two events combined, it was like, okay, I have some experience of some things that have happened. They were upsetting to me. So instead of getting mad or tweeting something mean or something, like, okay, so go try to be part of the solution, get involved, talk to people, all the involved parties, and then see if I can't make something better, even just a little bit right here in my community. So those were really kind of what drove me.
Okay. I really do believe that immigration was what was the biggest thing on people's minds during this election. And it was the fear that a lot of people have that the illegal immigrant rate at which we had been, having for decades, was depressing wages and ruining things like the local emergency room, or maybe the impact on the education system or whatever. Do you think those are legitimate fears?
I find that those fears are unfounded. I mean, I know, I now work in the emergency room. I almost never see a person that speaks Spanish in the emergency room. Most of them are afraid to seek care. I know we had a situation like 5 or 6 months ago where it was a very bad car accident. A family was hit by a drunk driver. All the people in the car didn't speak English, and I think almost all of them were undocumented. They didn't want to seek care. They were terribly injured, and they're like, no, because they don't want to be on the radar screen. They don't want to seek care. So I have to say, working in my hospital, in my emergency room, almost no undocumented people are there because they don't want to seek care. They don't want to literally be on the radar. I don't know, and as far as in our schools, it was a little shocking to me when my kids first started going to our school. So many of the kids' English is not spoken at home. So how do I set up play dates? So-and-so wants to spend the night at so-and-so's house. How do I set that up when there's a language barrier between me and the parents? And so I know initially I was a little standoffish because I didn't have a lot of experience with, Latinx people or whatever. And as my kids now have been through this school and the elementary schools, for 14 years, I think that they add so much to our school. Their children are the most hardworking, respectful, don't break the rules, again, because they don't want to get on the radar screen, behaving, being quiet, being nice in public, all these things. These kids are some of the nicest kids I've ever met. I mean, they never get in trouble. I volunteer in the library, or I help at, on the playground. It's like, these are always the kids that follow the rules and are just so kind and respectful. And I don't know, I don't feel like they're impacting my children's education. If anything, I feel like my kids' experience has improved because of it. They've been exposed more to other cultures, and they've learned to see that there are people that are different from them, and it's okay. I don't know about the employment thing, though. I mean, I can see that there may be some industries where people feel like it's impacting on their jobs. It's not impacting on mine and my ability to get a job. But I'd imagine there's some other fields where that's probably a legitimate concern.
You make such a convincing case that we've just completely messed up. Like, all the folks that we allowed to come in here illegally, because we did that for decades, right? Mm-hmm. We've just given them, we've treated them like lab rats or something. It's this grand experiment where, hey, we get cheap labor and somebody gets some new votes or whatever, and it's terrible, right? Mm-hmm. You make such a convincing case that those folks, they're not happy campers. They're not in a good situation. I mean, sure, they get some benefits from being here, and that's good for them, right? But we've horribly messed up this situation. So I would like to stop this grand experiment of saying, look, we're just going to decide we're not going to enforce border security. Is that something that you would agree with?
I do think there has to be some type of border security. I was thinking about how can we make this work for the people that did come in illegally. Most of these people can't afford the fees. Like, I know to renew your DACA was $495, because I know there were some organizations here locally that were trying to help them. There's got to be a way to work with these people. Okay, let's say that they have a a job that we need or we need more of. Okay, great. Come forward, let's work with people. Let's do it like a student loan or something. I don't know, but there's a way to do it.
Okay. Would you agree, though? I mean, if you're a guy in Vietnam or, Sri Lanka, India, someplace where you're trying to become a U.S. citizen, can you see the unfairness of the situation?
Yes, absolutely. Because, like you were saying, if it's somebody from, I don't know, Vietnam or something, they can't walk across the border to come here and just show up. They have, it's a far harder thing, but I can't see that.
Okay. But for the folks that are here already, either the DACA recipients or others who have been here for years and years, do you think they should have a pathway to citizenship?
Definitely.
Really?
I do.
See, what worries me, and I think what worries conservatives, is that is a kind of a betrayal to the folks who have played by the rules. Don't you? I mean, isn't that something that would kind of sour our culture, our society?
I can see
Just
where
the
you're
relationship?
coming from. And I can see that because, like a large majority of the physicians I work with, they're not from the United States. They're from India, they're from Sri Lanka. Some of them are from South American countries. Yeah, and they all had to come here the right way. They had to go through all the questioning. They had to pay all the money, So it's like they played by the rules. But I think part of it, too, is especially because of their profession and the amount of money they make, they are able to do that. They're able to play by the rules, whereas people that are lower income, it's harder. They maybe don't have the educational background, the job skills, the money, the financial security. So I think it's harder for them. But I do agree with you. Why do these people need to follow the rules if these people aren't following the rules? So I do agree with you. But then, at the same time, I know I could use that same argument for billionaires that have all sorts of tax loopholes and offshore things. And yet this single mother, every year when I get my taxes done, the guy goes, God, you pay a lot in taxes. And it's like, yeah, because I follow the rules, but some billionaire is putting his money in an offshore account. He's not following the rules, but I am. So I see what you're saying, but that still doesn't make me not pay my taxes every year.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do you think that healthcare is a human right?
I do. I really do. I just today, we were at church, and one of my patients from a couple weeks ago who's homeless was asleep in the back of our church. It's been freezing, and so he stayed and was at our church this morning and snoring loudly through the church service because it was the only place where he could be safe and find rest, And I remember working with him as a patient. These people have absolutely nothing. They have probably made a million bad choices. They've alienated their families. They got nothing. But they still need to be cared for. And the most I've learned about healthcare, I have learned from my homeless patients. When you see a person who has absolutely nothing, and they are sick and they're afraid or they're dying, you realize that the most compassionate thing we can do is care for these people regardless of their situation. And, I had one a couple weeks ago. He was an alcoholic, he was in withdrawal, he's been on the streets for a very long time. And, we were walking, and there was a sign on a patient's door, and he wanted to know what it was about. And I said that it was the person in that room was actively dying, that they were trying to give the family room to be with their family member and not interrupt. And he burst into tears, and I didn't know what to do. So I kind of hugged him and helped usher him back to his room. And when we got back there, he said, "Can I tell you something in a non-Harvey Weinstein way?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "So other than a blood draw or someone checking my blood pressure, you're the only person to touch me in 5 years." Because he's a homeless person that you just look the other way or go on the other side of the street, But he said that was the first time he had got compassion in a long time, And I think I look at those people and I say, yeah, healthcare is definitely a human right.
Okay. I don't understand why we as a country decided to write it into the law that a hospital had to accept someone who was indigent, and they appear to get treatment that is of the same level as the people who have, like a concierge health insurance program. Now, I don't think anybody in the world would say there shouldn't be a safety net. But I remember, the folks that are in the armed services, when they need to get inoculations, they don't get seen, in a waiting room and then one-on-one with a doctor.
Yeah.
They line them all up and they give them an inoculation. So I do know that there are some economical ways of providing safety nets. Are we using those economical ways, or are we simply saying we're going to treat them the same?
I don't think we probably are. I think there's a lot of different ways to streamline, and we've got to get creative, and we've got to kind of get out of the way that we think about things, but there's other ways that they could streamline and make things easier, and we just don't.
Have you heard about the what people are calling the millennial success sequence?
No.
It's this interesting thing. If you look at what people do in terms of the sequence of their life, and you balance for race, income, education, even intelligence tests, if you balance them all out, then you have an 87% chance of being, middle to upper class if you if you graduate from high school, if you get a job, if you then get married, and then start having children. What do you think about trying to teach that to folks all across society?
I serve on the site councils for all three of my children's schools, and Oregon has one of the worst graduation rates in the country, bottom 5. Our high school has one of the hugest absenteeism problems. Yeah, so we cannot serve this next generation if they are not at school, in school, and learning school. And, we've looked at surveys and different things of what are keeping these kids out of school. It was eye-opening for me. I mean, I did not realize my privilege. I am a white, able-bodied, heterosexual, educated woman. I am so lucky. But as I look at what the barriers are that are keeping these kids chronically out of school, their parents are homeless. There's a divorce. I had to stay home and take care of my siblings so mom could work because she has 3 jobs and that's the only way we have food on the table. We're not supporting, especially like these lower class people, and the increase in homelessness. I mean, I think they said 19% of the children that go to our high school are from homeless families. So they couch surf, they live sometime at granny's house, but I mean, so they're not going to school, so they're not getting an education, so these people aren't going to be able to have job advancement, and then when they have children, we're restarting the cycle all over again. So I feel like it starts in the schools. I firmly support public schools. I'm pretty darn scared about some of the things with the charter schools and Betsy DeVos and those type of things, because I believe in public schools. I went to public schools. I now have a master's degree, and I've been working in my profession for 20 years. Public school works. My kids go to public school. They're getting amazing degrees, but we got to keep the kids in school, and we have to support some of these lower income people so that these kids can actually go to school. I think education is where it's at. And I think that's one of the things we're missing in all these, abortion and Muslim ban and, DACA. And it's can't we just fund public schools so that these kids can get educated, so that they can contribute to society?
Well, are you familiar, though, with the complaint that we have from conservatives is that public schools have changed. I agree with you 100%. I mean, Isaac Asimov went to the New York City public schools. You couldn't get a better education in the world than that. So many people, Larry King, they all went to public school,
yeah.
Right? But now the public schools are, what is it? They say there used to be 1 administrator for every 8 teachers or something. Now there's 9 administrators for every 8 teachers. It's just crazy. So, the big problem we have with education is that, there's education and then there's education.
Yeah, because it's the same in healthcare. Why do we have to have a vice president of this and 16 heads of this? I just need nurses, doctors, and therapists. I don't need 5 million administrators. I need the people that are going to literally wipe the butts of the patients and provide the breathing treatments. So it's the same in school. So I completely agree with you. Why so much overhead? It can be a lot leaner. And then, you could potentially staff more teachers if you have less administrators making tons and tons of money. So I don't know. I completely agree with you.
It's so complex. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
I don't want to take any more of your time.
So ends this interview in our Drive to Understand series. That was Ericka Thessen in Eugene, Oregon. I really appreciate that you shared such real-world experience about things like DACA, emergency rooms, and the education system. I hope you consider supporting this series by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Thanks.